Hello YouTube, this is going to be an install and a quick review of the KLX 230 4-gallon gas tank from Hivolt Spares. I'm going to go through how I installed it, some of the troubles I had, and how I feel about it after using it for about a month. So I wanted to make this video because there aren't currently any videos or tutorials online on how to install this gas tank. Seems not many people have it, so wanted to get a video out there. There are videos on the KLX 300 gas tank from IMS, and a lot of it is the same. So I'm going to link two videos that I followed to help me figure out some of the details, and I'm going to let you know some of the troubles I had and what I did to resolve them. I also forgot to record the first couple parts of the install, and so I'll just tell you what I did now. So first things first, you have to take off the side plastics. You have to take off the seat. All of the plastics have to come off, both sides. And the mounting to the tank, you take off this top bolt right here, and then the old tank slots in, and I think it had 1 or 2 bolts on the side. And once you get the tank loose, you're gonna have to pull the gas lines off the underside of the tank and the bottom of the tank. I would also recommend disconnecting the battery. As you'll see later in the video, I accidentally shorted a screwdriver out on the battery terminal, because once you take the seat off and the plastics off, the top of one of the terminals is just right there exposed, and I gave myself a real good scare when I dropped a screwdriver and it contacted the frame and the battery and sent sparks flying. So once you got the seat off and the plastics off, I'd say disconnect the battery. Just make sure you're staying safe. You're working with potentially some gas is going to leak out and some fumes. So better to be safe. And one more thing, I'm going to apologize about my terrible recording skills. Some of the clips I took with my phone vertical, which is a big no-no when recording videos for YouTube. But I'm not about to take the bike back apart to get better shots, so just bear with me on this one. So here's the inside of the gas tank, and you can see it cracked around the edge, but it's not like cracked as in broken. It's more like the plastic just expanded right there. And I think it's because they pressed in the aluminum top that you hook the locking cap to. So I'm going to use it. It's at the top of the tank. It's not through. And you can see there's also a ton of like shavings of plastic, which is why they say to rinse the tank out with gas. So I'm going to do that right now. But I think it'll be all right. I'm going to use it, and I hope it holds up. And so here's the top of the tank, and you can see like they mold it, and then they must press this in. And so when they pressed it in, it must have expanded the plastic on the inside and made it fracture like that. But again, it's like there's no, that crack, it's not like it's going around this edge. It's not going anywhere. So I feel safe using it, and it's not like it's going to separate and fall apart. So here I've got the tank off. This was the fuel line. Again, this just slides out and then it comes right off. You don't have to take the green clip off all the way. It literally just, popped out with my fingers and then slid off. The power connector. The biggest question that I don't know, and hopefully maybe someone can inform me in the comments, is the tank had this drain line that goes to underneath the bike for if you tip it over, the fuel just spills out, and then this vent. And so this is for the evaporation canister. It goes into here. It's got 2 on the top. It's this one right here. It goes in, and then this goes around down to whatever this is. I have no idea what the heck this is, but it's got a connector right here and then another valve, another line that goes around, and it's this one right here, and it goes down. It's got blue tape, and then it goes right here. So, you know, the fuel line goes right here, and it's this connector, but then this is the one that comes off the evaporation canister. And so what I'm wondering is if I take this off right here and cap it, they sell little rubber caps. You know, I'm thinking of taking this off, putting a cap, putting that little clip on so it doesn't go anywhere. And then I can take the canister off, and then I can take this off, whatever the heck this is. And I do know they sell dummy plugs that go in that connector to trick it into thinking it's still plugged in. But I also heard you don't even need that, because all it does is just, you know, it'll throw up a code if they plug into your bike, but it doesn't affect performance, so I've heard. Again, I absolutely know nothing about this and figuring it out as I go along. So hopefully someone can inform me on that too, because then, you know, you can save maybe a pound or two by taking the canister and then this thing off. It's also got another connector on the bottom, so actually that's two connectors. And so at least for now, what I'm going to do is, you know, the fuel pump plug and the fuel line are going to be reused. This drain line, I'm just going to pull out. It just goes to the bottom of the bike. I'm not going to need it. And then this is the one that goes to the evaporation canister. And what I'm going to do is just, you know, shove it somewhere and making sure it's open to air, but, you know, up. So that way it doesn't get any dirt in it. But I'm going to leave it open. I'm not going to plug it. And then maybe I'll just zip tie it somewhere around here, so that way it stays under here, stays dry. So I don't know if it's going to pull air into this all the way through the canister into the injector, or, you know, or if it's going to cause a problem. And I'll figure out pretty quick if the bike's running funny and I should do something about it. But if anyone knows if I should plug this or leave it open, that would be great too. But theoretically, and my reasoning is this is normally plugged into the tank, and it goes up into the tank and just gets the vents, the fumes of gas. So gas is not supposed to go down this line, just the fumes. The vapors are supposed to go through here, you know, go through the charcoal filter and then condense and then go back in. And so, you know, I don't want, if it's normally open to the tank atmosphere, I think it'll be okay just being open to the regular atmosphere, rather than being plugged and maybe causing a vacuum of some sort. And then the bottom of the canister has one more line coming off of it, this one right here, which also ends up just being a drain line. It goes all the way under the bike, and that's the second hose, the second drain line that's under the bike. There's two. One is this tank, and then one's off the bottom of the canister, which I'm assuming if you tip the bike over and fuel gets into the canister, it's supposed to go through and then, you know, go to the bottom of the canister and then out the bottom of the bike. So that I'll leave on there for now, but again, it would be nice to be able to take the canister off and take that line out of there. Tools I recommend. When the tank was on, getting my hands up underneath to try and pull these off was really difficult. You know, so I used some long needle nose pliers and, you know, took the clamps off enough, and then you can't really get your fingers in there to yank the tube off. So if you just take a screwdriver and slide it under the tank and then put it against the edge of these, and then you kind of just wiggle it. You know, you can just wiggle it from one side, and then maybe go around to the other side and wiggle it, and just give it a little tug, and this will push it enough to get it going, and then it'll slide and pop off. But without that, I would have been yanking on it forever and wouldn't have moved. So I know it says rinse it out with gas. I'm gonna rinse it out with water first, since I can get the hose up in there, and there was a lot of plastic chunks, and I really don't want to get any plastic chunks in the fuel line. I don't think the bike has a fuel filter on it, and I'm not planning on adding one, so I really want this to not have any little chunks of plastic left in it. And then I can fit my hand in there, so I'm gonna hand dry it with a towel, and then I'll maybe rinse it with a little bit of gas like they said. All right, so here's the two tanks side by side. Next, I'm gonna just take the fuel pump off, and all the parts are the same. I'm just gonna transfer it over to here. There's an O-ring in there. That's about it, I think. Or maybe there's a rubber gasket. No, it looks like it's an O-ring. So yeah, I'm just gonna do that real quick. I noticed it doesn't have these two holders. I think there's a bracket that goes over this. It's in the pouch of tools they gave me, but I haven't looked very closely at that yet. And here's what I'm talking about this having the drain hose that goes under the swing arm, and then this one goes to the top of the evap canister, and then this tank obviously doesn't have it. So I won't be using the evap canister or the drain line. The tank has a vent on the top of it, so you know, that should be fine. And you can also, you know, really see how big of a difference. Like, you know, you get your 2-gallon tank and then your 4-gallon tank. So they had a lot of space on the side that they added, and then these two fins, which they're actually really narrow. Like right here where they sit over the side of the bike, it's like I couldn't get my hand through here when I was trying to clean it out. You know, I could kind of stuff the rag up in there, but it's like it gets real narrow right here. Maybe not towards the top as much, but you know, they use the space efficiently, and it's pretty well designed. The bike itself has like stuff, you know, in the way, like the horn and a couple other things, and so it's like the stock tank has this, you know, weird dent in it, you know, and all these shapes because they just designed it because they had to fit it, you know, and so this just matches it. You know, it's got the same. So it's not symmetrical either, actually. It's like you see on this side, it's got these two bolts over here, and it's kind of on an angle, and then these two are a lot closer, and they're on a completely different angle. So it's like one is flat, and then the other one is tilted quite a bit. So I think those will mount to the side plastics, or there's a little bracket that they give you. So I'll figure that out in a little bit. So I just wanted to take a minute and pause and talk about these brackets. When I was installing the tank, once you're done installing the tank, these are facing down, and so I totally forgot they were even there. And at the end, I had 2 brackets left over, as seen in the center right here, and I just had no idea where they were supposed to go. And it wasn't until editing this video that I realized these brackets are supposed to go on the bottom of the tank right here. Now, knowing that, I don't know which way they're supposed to go. If they're supposed to go facing outwards to put something between the plastic and the tank, or facing inwards to protect the tank from, possibly protecting the tank from hitting the ground if you choose to run without the stock plastics, is my only thought for these brackets, because they don't mount to the plastic. They don't, they just mount to the tank. So my assumption is these are meant to go on the tank, and if you're not using the stock side plastics, this will just protect the bottom corners of the tank during a tip over. It'll land and scuff these little brackets up rather than the corners of the tank. But I don't think they're needed to use the tank. I think they're just little protection brackets. And if you've ever wondered what the stock fuel pump looks like, it actually has, you know, a little float that raises and lowers when your tank is full or empty. So the stock fuel pump looks like this. The O-ring is actually kind of already seated inside the pump, so it came with it and should just fit right in. And then yeah, the fuel pump float is literally just a little float that lifts and lowers as the tank fills. And the pump can only go in one way It came with a new bracket, so I'm using that. It's got a notch, and then the bolts are not symmetrical, and so if you flip it over, it won't fit, so it can only fit one way. Getting this centered was actually kind of difficult. It kind of wants to slide around in there. You just got to kind of gently put it there, and then once it's all lined up, I'm just gonna put these in and get them all finger tight and just go around them and do a star bolt pattern. Yeah, and they were surprisingly tight in the stock tank. Like, they were compressed down till they were just bottoming out. So I'm gonna do them pretty tight. I'm using a pretty small wrench, so I don't think I'm gonna strip them, but also I don't want to strip them. So yeah, I'm just gonna feel it out. And you also want to be really careful to not break this off. This is like really flimsy, and a couple times, I'm using the wrench, and your hand slips and you might land on that. So last thing you'd want to do is have to buy another fuel pump just because you broke one little plastic fitting. All right, so here I am just kind of fitting the tank, seeing if it's in the right spot, seeing if anything's getting in the way. And what just happened was I had this screwdriver sitting up here this whole time, and it slid and it hit between those two connectors right there. And I've still got the battery plugged in. I have no idea what those two are, but it shorted on those and it sent sparks flying and scared the shit out of me. And I just rinsed the tank out with gas, so there's probably gas fumes right there. So always have your fire hydrant ready on standby, because close calls happen. But yeah, be careful where you keep your screwdriver, and maybe disconnect the battery if you're a little smarter than me before you do this. Well, I figured out where the mystery washer goes. Right here, that's why it was in the tank with the fuel pump and the gas tank bag, because it is for the seat. The other tank has a welded on little notch for your seat to come up and hook under, and then you bolt the seat to the back of the bike as well. So that's what that is, just a little, I'll put some Loctite on that, but it's just meant to hold the front of the seat in, slide up underneath that. So that's pretty neat. Figured that out. All right, I just popped that green fuel line back on, went past, and then popped the clip in, popped the connector in. It's pretty easy. And then, yeah. All right, installing the OEM locking gas cap was pretty straightforward. It's just the 4 bolts. It's got to be unlocked and open. And the OEM gas cap does have a vent hole right here, so it should vent properly as well. Shouldn't have anything trapped inside. And then this tank does have an overflow drain right here that's drilled into the side, so if you overflow the gas tank out the spout right here, it'll go out this and leak down the side. But again, it should vent. This has a vent on it, so no worries there. And then I put the seat back on, because that'll go first, and then the side plastics I'm going to do next. But before I do anything else, I'm going to fill this up with a little bit of gas, and then I'm going to just try and fire it up and maybe ride it around real quick just to make sure everything's working. All right, so filled it up with a little bit of gas, and we're going to try and start it up. And then you want to check for leaks. I'm just worried about down here near the fuel line where it connects, or the fuel pump. Right in there. Fuel pump. Fuel line's not leaking. It's not leaking over there. Yeah, I'm pretty happy that it fired up. so now I'm gonna put the side plastics on, and you've got these spacers because the plastic is gonna be out a little farther than it used to be before. So you got too long, too short. And then you've got these brackets right here, and these are for connecting one of the tabs on the top of this to the tank. So I'm gonna figure out where all these go. All right, and then these brackets, they can only go one way in. The notched end goes into the tank, the wider end won't fit, and then the wider end has threads welded on for the nut for the plastic. And so I put that on the bottom because the plastic nuts have a spacer, and so that goes in the plastic. So yeah, it goes that way. And then over here, these spacers, the long one goes on the bottom. I put the long one up top first and the short one down here, and the short one didn't fit. It was like pushing the tank in. So long one goes on the bottom, and then the short one goes up here in the center of the plastic. Like every good project, I've got 4 extra bolts and 2 brackets extra that I have no clue where they were supposed to go. So the tank's on, it's secure, the plastics are on, everything works. So I guess I don't need them. If anyone has any ideas, let me know. All right, here it is, way too late in the night, and I finished installing the tank, putting all the plastics back on. The top of the tank sits just a little bit higher. It's got this like raised section. So my tank bag, I just had to adjust it a little. It still fits perfect. It's just a little higher than it was before. And then the first thing I noticed sitting on the bike is that it's a lot wider. So, you know, it did stretch out the plastics, and you know, it brought these out more. You know, this is where it used to mount right here, and this is where it mounts now. And so it's like that moved out a couple inches, and I can definitely feel it with my legs. My knees hit like right about here on the tank. It's not too wide though. It was noticeably wider, but it wasn't so wide that I don't think it's gonna have any problems. But yeah, I took it for a quick spin around the block, did a little late night drive. I think the next thing is gonna be maybe some lights. The 230 does have a LED headlight, but holy moly is it practically useless even on high beams, because it is sketchy driving at night, and I almost hit a porcupine in my own driveway heading back up. It is really dark, and the headlight does not do much at all. So I guess next on the list will be some auxiliary lights. But yeah, tank works good. Didn't have any problems, didn't stall, didn't cause any problems. So I'll let it sit out overnight. It didn't leak at all before, so I don't think it's gonna do anything overnight, but we'll see. So yeah. All right, so what are my impressions after using this for about a month? I've put around 600 or 700 miles on it. I did 2 sections of the New England BDR using this tank. And it definitely does its job, it works, and I'm very happy that I did this. It increased the fuel capacity from the 2-gallon tank, which really only had a usable 1 gallon. A lot of these bikes, the fuel indicator will start blinking empty, and you've only used 1 gallon. And so I really went from, you know, instead of a 2-gallon tank, this isn't quite 4 gallons. I think it's like 3.5, maybe a little bit more than 3.5, but I don't think it's quite 4 gallons. When I first installed the tank, I put just a little bit of fuel in it, just so I could ride around the property and test the fitment, made sure it worked. And then the next morning I brought it to the gas station and I filled it up, and I think I only put like 3 gallons in when I filled it up that first time, and I don't think I could have put more than half a gallon in for that initial test ride. That, like, I don't think I put a whole gallon in. So I can't guarantee it's actually 4 gallons, and I don't know the exact amount, but I don't think it's quite 4 gallons. But it is still a huge improvement over the 2 gallons. So the blinking empty fuel indicator is still probably the biggest problem. Instead of blinking after using 1 gallon and having 1 gallon left, it'll start blinking, when you've used maybe half or a little more than half of this tank. And so I used to get around 80 miles before it would start blinking empty on the original tank. And now I can get to 180 miles before it starts blinking empty. But then I fill it up and I only put 2 gallons in. So I've got at least another gallon and a half to go. So you still do get you probably get 250, 300 miles range out of this tank. But that stupid indicator it'll blink at you way before that and make you just think that you're empty. And you just can't get it out of your mind when it's blinking empty that, oh, I probably have another 100 miles to go. But at the back of your mind, you're thinking I can run out at any point. And it's like the whole reason I got this was so I wouldn't have to carry a fuel pouch or a canister on the back. And so I think during the install, if there's a way to bend the fuel level, or if there's a way to calibrate it to be a little lower, but that's definitely still really annoying. But that's not a fault of the tank. That's a fault of Kawasaki's fuel pump and level sensor in the tank. The next issue is there's a little bit of vibration. I need to adjust the tank. This plastic on this side, at certain RPMs, it vibrates up against the tank back and forth, and it buzzes, and it makes this whole side plastic vibrate. And you can feel it in your legs, and it kind of just amplifies the vibration of the bike. And I know I can fix that if I just move the tank around a little, just loosen it up and scoot it one way or the other. And I need to install those brackets that I was mentioning earlier. I'm not sure if those push the plastic away just a little bit so it doesn't touch the tank anymore. But that's one thing you got to look out for, is when you put it back together, you might have to kind of adjust the tank a little to make sure it's not hitting the plastics on one side, because it will vibrate. And I definitely felt that heading back home on the BDR section we did, riding the highway for like 2 hours on this thing. I could feel the vibration in my right leg the whole time, and it just takes the energy out of you. And also, like I said, when I first installed the tank and just did a quick test drive, my initial impression, like the first thing I noticed, was that it is wider. It's like the front of the bike just pulls this plastic out, and so your knees hit against the side. And it hasn't caused a problem. I did the whole BDR. There's a couple off-roading sections that required standing and maneuvering. And really the problem is that the plastic is smooth, and so it's hard to grip the side of the bike with your knees just because the plastic's so smooth. So I think I can just put some grip pads on the side. And then because it's at such an angle now, you put your knees right here and they kind of want to slide back. But that can be resolved with some of those stick-on grip pads that help with some friction. Another thing, there was no leaks, no problems. The install went well, and haven't had any problems with the fuel. So I did a little bit more research into that charcoal canister, and I guess what I need is also sold by Hivolt Spares is the pair valve delete, which is this right here. and it'll come with a plate that goes over this, and it'll come with that dummy plug that plugs into the sensor on the charcoal canister on the other side. And then with those, you can get rid of the charcoal canister and not have any check engine lights or anything go on. But if you just leave the charcoal canister there like I did with that vent open to atmosphere, then you can use this just fine. I have not had any issues with the fuel injector or fuel getting to where it needs to go. Hasn't stalled, hasn't stopped on me. No check engine lights, nothing. So as long as you just leave the canister in, or not every KLX 230 comes with a charcoal canister either. This model did, yours may not. But worst case scenario is you can just leave it in and it won't cause any issues. And finally, I'm just gonna, leave some of my thoughts on this bike in general, and the gas tank, and the reasons why I did this in the first place. So I got the 230S because this was my first ever motorcycle, first ever bike, and as a beginner bike, it's been great. It absolutely sips gas, and having this 4-gallon tank, means I have a lot of range. A lot of adventure can be had. That being said, the trips I've been doing, I've never really had to worry, even with the 2-gallon tank, about running out. And I don't know if I really needed this. It's nice to have, it's nice peace of mind, but it's not necessary, I guess I would say. This thing gets anywhere between 65 and 100 miles a gallon. When we were just doing back roads, I was getting 100 on the trip meter and only putting 1 gallon in the tank. And on the highway going up, we'd stop and maybe I was getting 65 miles a gallon on the highway. As a beginner bike, it's been great. I think the key standout features of the KLX are that 6th gear. I know a lot of people recommend the Yamaha XC250, and I just don't see how anyone could recommend that without that 6th gear, because having that 6th gear has been so important riding in the United States on 55, 65 mile an hour roads. That 6th gear comes in so much handy for, cruising at those higher speeds. This bike isn't meant to do that, but you just have to do that sometimes. I had to go 2 hours up the highway to get to the BDR and 3.5 hours down to get home. And it was not fun. It was not comfortable, but it was able to do it. Whereas, I don't think the XC250 can cruise at 65, 70 miles an hour. But this bike can. That's the thing, is everyone said, this bike can do everything you need it to do, just not perfectly. And the big things are, it does vibrate a lot. Even with, I've got, foam grips on the handles, the better seat, it just took the life out of me coming home. That 3.5 hour highway ride back down, the whole machine vibrates through your whole body, and it just rattles your organs, and it just drains the energy out of you. It's not like the seat was fine. I got the seat concept seat. So, we pulled over a few times and, walked and stretched. And that wasn't it. It wasn't the seat. It was the motor vibrating and just taking the energy out of you. The windscreen absolutely helped. And as like a mini adventure bike, I absolutely love this thing. I was able to pack all the camping gear for a 3-day trip: tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, pillow, clothes, snacks, in these little Tusk excursion bags. And so it's like everything I need can fit on this bike, and it can handle it just fine, you know? But it's just still not perfect. And I don't know if there is a perfect bike out there. But as a beginner bike, this thing is super easy, very confidence inspiring. You know, everyone that's reviewed this bike has said that, and it's because it's true. The S model being short to the ground, you know, it's easy to pick up. I've dropped this thing dozens and dozens and dozens of times already, and you know, you just pick it back up and it keeps going. You know, no damage. So it is great, but I have had the opportunity to, you know, ride some KTMs out in Arizona a few times, and it just doesn't compare. You know, even though on paper they might be very similar, it just, standing up on this thing isn't as good. The power isn't as good. The ergonomics, and I don't know what to do to this bike to make it like that. I don't know if this could be the perfect adventure bike. So I'm thinking this winter I might try and do the suspension. I might get some springs and raise the bike up to non-S height, and wondering if, you know, that makes it a little more comfortable to ride over you know, BDR style terrain, or if the answer is just a bigger bike. So we will see. But, you know, it is great that this bike does have the option to do all these things. You know, it's like, it's got, you know, you can put luggage on it, you can put a windscreen on it, you can put handguards, you can put a larger gas tank, you can do the suspension if you want to. And, you know, there's just enough aftermarket support that anything you want to do to this bike, you can. You know, you can make it how you want to make it. But I just don't know if the bike itself can be what you want it to be. And I think it is, you know, the big thing, I don't know if you can fix the vibrations. And that's the one thing that is really killer on this bike. And cruising around, you know, on the BDR at 35 miles an hour to 55 on some of those gravel roads, you know, that's fine. But getting to and from just absolutely kind of ruined the experience a little. And that's just not something you can fix with this bike. You know, I don't know if I can get someone to drive me up and trailer the bike up to the destination. But then at that point, it's like, you know, might as well get a dirt bike to do some off-roading, you know, if you're going to trailer it. So we'll see. It's definitely a awesome bike. It's been a fantastic first bike. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on the KLX in general. So I hope you enjoyed.